All right, today we had a milestone for Corrective Culture. We had Kingsbury on the podcast. Absolute legend, a good friend of Paul's, good friend of Aubrey Marcus, and just an overall really influential guy. Been in the UFC, really good fighter, and we talked about how he went from like the warrior archetype and really softened and went and centered himself.
Yeah, we spoke about experience with open relationships, went head deep into that and how if that's what you want to do. And spoke about that time of like when that sport ends, what's next, you know? And what else we spoke about?
Yeah, like what really fulfills your soul. We touched on Spirit Gym a little bit.
And the farming aspect. He owns a farm now in Austin, Texas, and spoke about the death of an animal and what that really means, and how we can integrate closer to that, and how we should integrate closer to that.
Yeah, very, very aligned. I feel like he's very aligned with the way we see the world. So tune in. All right, guys. Today we have a very special guest for the Corrective Culture podcast. We have Mr. Kingsbury. He is a professional MMA fighter turned dad, farmhand, full-time farmhand, and a very influential, amazing guy. So thank you for your time and thanks for coming on, man.
Oh, it's my pleasure. My pleasure. I was checking. You guys were into Chek as well. I was like, let's go. Let's do it.
Yeah, man. That's why when I saw that book in the background, it stood out from the library. And it's funny how you said that, because we recently been talking. We're like, we want some books in the background. So we're going to get some shelving and chuck our favorite books in there.
Yeah, fully.
And sets the vibe.
It does. It sets the vibe. Look how good that looks.
Yeah.
That's sick.
It does. It's a funny book cover too, because it's like,
just
like cheesy 90s, like,
so
this guy's in
90s.
great shape. He knows how to be healthy. Like, it's pretty silly, but I love it. It's especially in contrast to like Spirit Gym, where he hired a fucking legit artist to come in and do the most awesome psychedelic symbolism, where you're like, wow, this is unlocking some stuff. It's crazy. The artwork in Spirit Gym compared to How to Eat and Be Healthy is like the hand-drawn Poop Police lineup. He's come a long way.
So different. How are you? Have you been on Spirit Gym much lately? I saw your name on there the other day. How's it going for you?
Yep. I love it. I've finally caught up. The problem that I have is again, I can receive information, but if I want to be my best, it's in the mornings. And so when Paul launches at 2 on a Thursday, I've got about a good hour in me before I start fading,
Yeah, dude.
I popped on a couple of times for the live ones. I want to be on more. But I've been going through all the sanghas. And I love that shit, because I can just get that whenever. It's like it's like a Rogan podcast. I can do 45 minutes on a drive to jiu-jitsu, get another hour on a walk, so I'm able to chew through quite a bit of that. And I definitely like it too when I'm moving, so if I'm like walking the dogs and I'm listening early in the morning, it's like I feel like I'm retaining more of it than if I'm just sitting behind the computer screen,
For sure. What's like some cool shit you've learned from it, like personally for yourself so far? It's a pretty deep dive, eh? It's like
it's a really deep dive, and I don't know. I'll say 2 things that pop out to me the most are, one, when he goes over the teachings of Aurobindo. So like Aurobindo had studied every ascended master, anybody you consider one of the most, if they were a spiritual G, he looked into it and saw what were their common traits and what were they great at, and what did they all share, and that really stuck out to me because, and I forget the order of it, but these 4 traits. One of them was that wherever they go, they harmonize, right? So they're so harmonized that wherever they go, they harmonize. It reminded me of Carl Jung's story of the Rainmaker, which I don't want to bring all the way back because I'll butcher it. But, in effect, a guy goes, they call them the Rainmaker. There's a Westerner there. He's like, this is bullshit. It's not going to work. The guy goes into a hut for 3 days. He comes out and it starts pouring rain, right? So then the Westerner's like, how did you do it? And he said, I did nothing. When I left, I was harmonized. When I arrived, the land was in disharmony, so I entered into the hut so I could come back into harmony. And when I came into harmony, I came out and the land was in harmony, right? And I think of that, paraphrasing, of course, is like when we're in harmony, the whole field that we're around is affected by that. And I know I have buddies, like Tate Fletcher, Duncan Trussell, guys that would go to Steve Rondos before he passed away, East Forest. Right. And then like there was something about, even after his stroke, if he looked at you, you'd see like the eyes of God are penetrating you right now. And then in that experience, it would reset your body, it'd reset your nervous system. Wow. So like that to me is it's a very tangible thing to shoot for when you think of like wanting to be enlightened or become a spiritual master, anything on that list, like that seems like very grounded in reality. And what could be fucking cooler than that? You know, like there's, you know, shit's hitting the fan with your family and you just fucking walk in the room and it's like, guys, we're all good. And everyone's like, yeah, we are all good. Like, that'd be the best dad move ever to get to that level.
True king.
I like the other piece too, is he's finally tying in the physical. I think we're 9 or 10 of these in. And something I was always curious about, because I've gone through Chek's holistic life coach level 1.
Yeah.
I've done a lot of shit with him one-on-one and personally, you know, plenty of journeys together. And you know, he's one of my best friends / mentors, which is an odd thing.
Yeah.
An odd person, you know, odd role, I guess. But when he gets into the infant child development, I had heard about this from every Checky that I've known, right? You guys, you're in the physical, you know the shit inside and out. So when he talked about the one book, I forget the name, I think it's Linda Hartley or something like that.
Yeah.
But he's like, I've read 30 books on the subject. This is the one that mattered. I was like, Amazon right now. Yeah. I know I got to get into this. I've done the inchworm. I've done a lot of things, but having kids too, like really thinking about that. What does that actually look like? And I've been working with a guy named Connor Milstein, and he's excellent. He's from Philadelphia. Excellent guys. The first time in my life I've been training body weight only. And it's a lot of these core principles from childhood development. He's broken them down, but you know, even like hiking back when I'm doing a bridge from my back, a 45-degree bridge, not just pushing off the toes, but pulling my heels to my ass while I do that. And then feeling the range increase. And it's like, man, it's opening my thoracic. It's doing all sorts of shit.
Sick.
Wow.
That I had no idea would do. Like, and we're just, you know, I'm getting full activation. Part of it's like activate as many muscle cells as you can in the same rep. You know, so you might get only 2 or 3 reps, but you're spending a minute and a half, 2 minutes on one rep and you're fried afterwards. So that's been a really interesting and fun way to train. And I've always been a guinea pig first, where I want to try shit on for size. You know, if I hear enough good stuff from people, I'm like, yeah, let me live in that space for a while. Yeah. You know, I want to dip my toes in it. Like I want to go, let's do 3 months like that, you know? And so it's been cool to feel the difference.
That's sick, man. Yeah. With the infant development stuff too, I actually use it as my warm up for jiu-jitsu, because I'm like, in a short amount of time, you know, we're all meant to warm up, but I train at this club that we don't warm up. So I got to make sure I do my own warm up, right? And because I made enough mistakes just rolling fresh, and then all of a sudden my neck's kinked for 3 days because I didn't do anything from a guillotine, you know? And nothing warms it up better for me than just that inchworm going backwards. Because in my head, I like to break it down. I'm like, oh, I'm getting my suboccipitals, I'm getting my QL, I'm getting my lumbar extensors, I'm getting my lower abdominals. The only thing I'm not getting is my knees. And then I get up and I just do some little knee circle things, and then I'm good to go. But it's also like when I first learned about the infant development through Chek, through the Institute, it was a lot at the start. I didn't really understand how to really integrate it, but now I see it conceptually as like, oh, it's almost like a level of rehab. Like someone's got a sore shoulder, you're starting them off at crawling and some closed chain sort of stuff for their upper body and shoulder before they start doing all the rotator cuff stuff. And even just following that and following those planes of motion and you know, say that inchworm, now I realize that wakes up those sacral fibers of multifidus and the lumbar multifidus, where a lot of people are atrophied from back pain. But I didn't see it like that at the start. I thought, oh, this is just some magic stuff, you know? But now I'm like, when I really break it down, I'm like, oh, that's what it's doing. This shit's gold. But Paul taught me in a way they didn't have to tell me all that at the start when I knew fuck all, you know? So it's like, it's such a cool way, man.
When he breaks it, I think what you're talking about is so important too, because you're like starting from the inside out.
Yeah.
You know, like when you organize the spine and all the things that go into spinal movement, and how important is that in jiu-jitsu and rolling?
Yeah.
Dude.
You know, like, but you're starting from the inside out. Then as you get to the periphery, like everything else is organized because you spent the time on what mattered most. You know, that interior.
Yeah.
But when Paul starts talking about how that affects behavior and how the young men, you know, step into the warrior archetype, and the first thing the baby does around between months 3 and 6 is push away from the floor. It's where they differentiate. And they're really learning how to say no, you know? So like you can feed a baby anything you want at first, and then eventually the hand comes forward and it says, no, I don't want to eat that. But you know, all these young men, you know, they're obsessed with bench press.
Yeah.
Right. So that's them learning how to say no to daddy, most likely. Right.
Yeah.
It's like
fully.
fucking, whoa, dude.
Yeah.
Whoa,
That lesson
way
was
into bench
amazing.
press when I was a teen, you know? It's like, holy shit. You know, you started connecting those dots for me. I was like, that's fucking deep.
Yeah.
And 100% true. 100% true.
Oh man, that's so funny you say that, because sometimes I'll be like doing a single arm, like one with a kettlebell off the ground, and in my head, I sort of say like, get the fuck off me, and I like press and I push it, you know what I mean? And it gives me that power, like almost like I'm being smothered in jits or something.
Yeah.
And I'm like, just get off me, and it like gives me this extra
Daddy.
power. Daddy. So it's like,
Oh, man, it's cool to see. Like I've watched you for a pretty long time, man. And it's cool to see like you had like this, you know, like being in the UFC and having 18 fights, and you had this like real solid like warrior to you. And it seems like over the years, I mean, maybe from meeting Paul and like you mentioned Ram Dass and Duncan Trussell and stuff, you've really like centered in yourself, and you've moved out to a farm, and you can just see you're just peaceful. What do you think the biggest like turning point for you was through your career that made you like just go that way? You know, is that deep inside yourself?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, there was the biggest turning point was 2020, but prior to that, you know, I retired in 2014. So there was lots of changes that happened before that. I fought for 2 years in Arizona, and it was after my first loss where I decided to move back home to California and train at AKA. And not long, maybe 6 months after being there, they brought in a boxing coach who was Javier Vasquez's old boxing coach. And not Vasquez, sorry, Mendez. Our coach, Hav, his old boxing coach was a guy named Wheatsy, and he later became a cut man for the UFC. But he was a medicine man. He'd bring us out. He'd bring me and Kane out and different guys out for Sweat Lodge, and then eventually working with plant medicines. And so there was no one single journey.
Yeah.
But like each of those peeled a layer. Each of those allowed me to find more of the truth, more of a desire to be in nature, more contentment and joy with my life, and a real trajectory of like, what do I want to create in the world? What does my lifestyle design want to be like? You know, when Paul talks lifestyle design, he's like, think of how much money you want to make per hour. Okay, how much do you work now? Right? Do you spend, because you make $1,000 an hour, you're going to work 10, 12 hours a day and not have any fun? Like design every aspect of your life. And it was through the plant medicine journeys that I could really think about that. What is the type of partner that I want to spend the rest of my life with? What are the kind of kids that I want to have? How do I want to learn? Who can I learn from? You know, and really designing that. And, you know, like dominoes, everything's kind of fallen together. I've had so many synchronicities, really, as I've begun to take that reality tunnel on as a reality, as my reality. It's just shown up more and more. I would say 2020, I had a lot of fear, you know, like being in business with Aubrey Marcus, we were on it together. And then, you know, he started Fit for Service, and really that's like it's a year-long mastermind where we coach people and take people through transformational experiences, holotropic breath work, ecstatic dance, and anything that really works for us. We're going to bring people into that so that they can go through it together and come out on the other side of that as community, as people that have gone through hard shit and bonded. And that's been great. When 2020 happened, it was like, dude, we can't do what we're doing on Zoom. You know, like this just doesn't translate, right?
Yeah.
Like we did ecstatic dances online and shit like that. And it was like, this isn't the same. It's just not. And, you know, a lot of the world was shifting quickly, but not everywhere in the States was doing shit the same. So coming from out California was like one of the hardest places. And I remember them thinking, you know, Texas and Florida are going to open up first. We should see everyone drop like flies. And so the UFC, of course, was the first major sporting event. They went to Jacksonville, Florida. A month later, they came to Houston, Texas. 21,000 drunk fans that do not live by the last four doctors you'll ever need.
Yeah.
You know, they're not healthy. They got all the comorbidities, and no one gets sick and no one dies. So I was like, we got to have land here in Texas. We got to have a place where we can grow our own food. I've been into regenerative agriculture, and I've been into soil because of Paul, and I love his I Love Dirt shirt.
Yeah.
But let's actually take a hand in that and do it ourselves. You know, let's see, however challenging it may be, like, let's actually do that. Let's give that to our kids. Paul grew up on a farm. I didn't. My wife's the only one of us that grew up on a farm, oddly enough, but we've been able to learn from really cool people. And so it's a funny thing because up until 2020, I had an intention to let go of all fear. In 2020, I felt like it compounded, like I had every fear, you know, and I was like, and I really have a different look at fear now because I can see if used correctly, that can be the fire lit under your ass that actually creates positive change. And I don't think we'd be here. Like, I don't think we would have, I know we wouldn't be in the place that we're in right now with this farm for events, for live events, for our ability to grow our own food and farm if it wasn't for 2020. It would still be ahead of me. You know, it'd still be like, hey, when I retire, this is what we'll do. When the kids are older, when they're teenagers, this is what we'll do. You know, but 2020 made it a right now deal, you know, and I'm thankful for that. I really am. I think that's such a, that was a huge piece that just made it like, this is a right now thing. It's a move we need to do now. And so we've been fortunate enough to do that.
Fuck, that's awesome, man. Yeah, we had a very similar thing. Like we started this corrective culture thing probably in 2020, was it?
Yeah.
Maybe.
Started 2020.
Yeah, just as COVID kind of was like really ramping up down here. And it was like, I don't know how bad it was over there, but man, in Australia, like in Melbourne and stuff, it was just like locked down. Like people didn't leave their house for like 6 months, 8 months. Like it was wild. But luckily we're in this like little town that's a little bit more health conscious, but still everyone was just online. And we started studying more, doing more of the Chek stuff, putting it out there more, and then created products. And then since there, it's just like we had the same fear driven thing, and then it just went like boof. We're like, fuck.
Yeah, well, what it actually did was, because you know how like pre-COVID, it was, you'd say it was like 95% pro-vaccine, 5%. Like everyone was fully in the model, you know. And now the people, it really opened a lot of eyes up to oh, have they been right? Okay, I know they were wrong about this. What about these other things? You know, everything sort of shifted a little bit, and it actually in turn helped our business boom because we're just two dudes that are into health, and I guess out of the typical health archetype locally here in Australia. Like Jake, I mean, I got locked up years ago. Jake was an ex-professional, one of the world's best bodyboarders. So we weren't the archetype of it. So it helped bring in these other people in Australia that you don't have to be the guy meditating on the hill or talking about it all the time. You can still eat organic throughout the week and have a couple of drinks on the weekend, you know, and just start shifting towards that and not have to be a saint, but make better choices basically. And it really helped us a lot. Hey. And yeah, it was cool. But man, what I want to touch on for you is I heard you say something before, and I think this is a lot of people in my circle are also talking to me about this at the moment. But when you were talking about choosing your optimal life and writing down what you want, writing down the kids, writing down the partner, say when you saw your partner, which I'm hoping is the person you wrote down, right? Was there a moment that you're like, oh fuck, that's it, that's her, you know? And was it a moment of like, this is getting ridiculous now, you can have whatever you want?
Yeah, I mean, there is. I mean, I had a dream. The last lucid dream I've had is one that I've had since I was a kid, and it's one where I can fly. It's the only lucid dream I've ever had, and it's the only. I mean, there's been some negative repeating dreams where like we're the last people on Earth. It's a vampire takeover. I'm with my dad, and then he turns to hug me, and he bites my neck in the last scene right before I wake up. That's the only bad one about it. Yeah. But as far as good ones, I can fly, and I had this dream where I could fly, and I felt the power of it, and then just this booming voice from the sky came in that said, "You like it better when you can't." And I was like, no, and I just fucking woke up from it. Basically, like, you like it better when there are parameters, when there are rules, when there are limitations. And so, and I've thought of that because like how, if we are the controllers of our own destiny and we do create our own realities, how challenging do we want to make it? You know, Alan once talked about that. You know, you lived a dream and the dream was beautiful and the dream was easy and you had everything you wanted. And then you lived another dream and it got a little harder, and you lived another dream and it got a little harder. And then somewhere down the line, you woke up here.
Yeah.
Right. Like, in this place is as challenging as it is because all the previous dreams might've been easier, you know? And so I respect that and still hold it. But answering your question, it's funny because I had a college sweetheart who played basketball at ASU when I was playing football there. 6'2", you know, really tall, gorgeous, funny. She was awesome. And we had a great relationship for a long time. We were on and off again. You know, I learned a lot from her in that relationship. I ended up meeting my wife on a tour for the troops while I was still dating her, you know, and I was drawn to her like crazy. Didn't cheat, didn't do anything like that. And that boded very well for me in the long run with my wife because she knew I was a good boy. But
yeah,
seeing her, there was just something that drew me towards her, and really her sense of humor. And obviously she's drop dead gorgeous, but her sense of humor was something that it just warmed me up inside. I even got home from the tour and I was like, I told my ex-girlfriend, I'm like, you got to meet this girl. You're going to love her. She's going to be your best friend. She's so funny. And fast forward to, I get my second fight of the night. You know, I don't make shit in the UFC. I was basically getting paid an average of 10 grand a fight.
Yeah.
And so 10 grand to fight, 10 grand to show up, 10 grand to win. I get a $40,000 fight of the night bonus for my second one. So that makes it 60 grand.
Nice.
You got to pay 20% to coaches and managers. You got to pay fucking California 13.3, and you got to give the government the other half. So you walk away with less.
Whoa.
Less than half.
Bro.
And I realized right then, I'm like, I'm not gonna have the ability to buy a wedding ring, and unless I use some of this now, because I may not. I expected to get more fight of the nights. I didn't think that'd be the last one. but I also know that's how fighters think, right? Like I'm never gonna lose. I'm only gonna get bonused out. I'll be the champion, that kind of shit. So I put $5,000 down on the down payment for a $15,000 ring. And right in the moment of doing that, all the anxiety of being married and it not working out came up. So like my parents divorced when I was 13. I saw the writing on the wall for years and actually hoped for it. I prayed for it that they'd get a divorce. So it didn't affect me the way it affected my sister. But what I didn't want, knowing how different it was for me and my sister through the divorce, I didn't want to have kids and have them go through that, and so I really thought about that. And, before I was into Dispenza, I had a couple journeys with mushrooms. I remember to eat mushrooms with my buddy and we go to see the Green Lantern, which is the fucking worst movie ever. And then on mushrooms, it's even worse, right? It's way worse. So we leave there kind of like, what the fuck were we thinking? And I have a big Mastiff. I take her out for a walk. It's a full moon. And I'm telling my buddy the whole time, I'm like, I don't think it's going to work, and I'm telling him all the reasons. And he's like, no, he's being good devil's advocate. He's like, of course you guys are designed to be together. Of course it's going to work out. And that night I go to bed and I did the God, if you exist prayer, right? So like, if you fucking exist, that's where I was at that point. Like, God, if you actually exist, and I never prayed. I said, show me a sign that this will work or it won't work. Because I don't want to be 5 years into marriage and it not work. I don't want to have kids and it not work. I want to know now. And please make it so blunt that I can't deny it, that no part of me will be like, coincidence. Who knows if that's true or not, right? The next morning she broke up with me. And I was like, what the fuck? I'm looking at her like wide-eyed and she's sobbing. We lived together. We were basically married. We had a joint bank account, everything. We were everything but married. And I'm just staring at her like, you got to be shitting me right now. I was like, damn, dude, God exists. This is nuts.
Yeah, man.
Holy shit.
She's like, aren't you sad? And I was like, yeah, but you had no idea. I mean, I put a down payment on a wedding ring and last night we had mushrooms with the Green Lantern. And then I made the prayer to God and like, holy shit. So,
fuck.
I moved out 2 days after that. And it probably was like 6 months later, I got a text from Natasha saying, hey, I'm going to come out for a women's race and I'd love to stay with you and your partner. Let me know if I can. And I was like, hey, I'd love for you to come out, but it's just me now. And so right then she was like, hey, and we started chatting and shit just unfolded, so it was really, really awesome. But, as far as the manifestation piece on that, I knew when I broke up with Kristen, I hadn't thought of her at all because I was still in the grieving of having lost such an amazing partner that who I expected to be with the rest of my life with. And, one of the things that I thought was like, we had grown apart because, we'd go out in Scottsdale and it's party time. Post-fight, I'm like Chuck Liddell. I'm blowing rails. I'm keistering Molly in the poop chute. I'm going all in, right?
Sick.
And that was every fight, win, lose, or draw. We'd go hard to the paint. And that's kind of how my life was as a fighter. In the camp, I was perfect. I'm meditating. I'm reading Eckhart Tolle. I'm doing breath work. I'm not watching TV. I'm only reading and taking care of myself, mobility, cold baths. After the fight, total shit show. I'm eating Burger King. I'm doing coke. I'm doing all the things, right?
Yeah.
And I really lived in a polarized way. But I remember thinking about, once I started getting into plant medicines with Wheatsy, I started to not want that old life anymore. Like I was seeing deeper and deeper levels. I was also healing the reason I was getting shit-faced. And so it just wasn't attractive. It kind of felt old. I didn't have any judgment against it. It just felt old. Like, nah, I think I've done enough of that. And so I'd come home from fights. And then instead of going out, I might go out once, but then it was like, nah, I'm going to stay home tonight. I'll watch TV and hang with Lola, take a walk with her. And she kept going out. No judgment, but we kind of grew apart that way. And so one of the things that I wanted was somebody I could grow with. And I knew in asking that, because now I'd gotten into Dispenza, I knew if I'm going to ask for this, I have to meet it. I have to match it. I can't ask for the thing that I am not. I have to become the thing that I'm asking for in another person. And so with that, I knew if I want her to read my books, I got to read her books, and so I had like the very early on, the test was, I was like, hey, I'd like you to read A New Earth by Eckhart Tolle. And she goes, cool, read the 5 love languages. And I was like, all right, I'll read the 5 love languages, and it's a Christian guy. And I'm kind of like, I don't know about this dude, but I read it, where both touch is our primary form of love. And that made shit real easy because we were the same. And then I stopped back and I was like, well, I couldn't even tell you what her love language was. Gift giving, maybe, like I didn't know from the previous relationship of 6.5 years. But that started us actually, saying yes to each other when it was like, would you want to try this? Do you want to try that? And, we actually went through, I'd already read How to Eat, Move, and Be Healthy, but we went through that together, and that shifted our diet together. Like, we'd made so many leaps together that I hadn't with anyone else, there were just things, ultimately at the time I couldn't see how bonding that was. But in hindsight, I was like, that made all the difference in the world. We changed our lives together. We first were introduced to ayahuasca together and both drank together. We saw our kids together, on ayahuasca before having kids, before being married.
Wow.
A lot of shit like that, where it's like, I think that unfolding in hindsight was like crystal clear. But yeah, I didn't see a size, so Dispenza says, let go of the how and the when, and let go of the how the universe shows up to you with it, let go of the when it happens. And so, I didn't care how tall she was or, what her sports background was. I wanted an athlete. She's a foot shorter than my college sweetheart, so I really don't care about the height. She met all the other criteria. She met everything I was looking for in a person. And because of that, I had to grow pretty much immediately. You had to grow before her to access her. And a lot of growth with her as well. I had her move out to live with me in my mom's garage, because I was like, she's living in Vegas. I'm like, we can't do distance. Distance is what failed the last relationship. I don't want to grow apart. I don't want to continue doing shit without you. And I remember telling her, remember the phone call, I was like, I will pay for your flight and I'll drive all your shit back out in a U-Haul with my old man, and we'll set your room up the way it was, and you don't even have to be there for it. Like, if it doesn't work, you just say it's not working. You got a free flight home. I'll drive your shit out. We'll get it set up, and it'll be like it never happened. Or we could, and if it works, then we get to keep the ball rolling. She lived with me in a garage for 5 years. So it was like, she doesn't care about the money. That's for sure.
That's sick.
She's with me for me,
Yeah, dude. Seems like you got the coolest thing going on there with your family on the farm and that. She seems like a legend, eh? Yeah, I follow the Living with the Kingsburys as well.
Cool.
But man, what happened, man, to be honest, one of the biggest, like most influential podcasts for me was the one you did with Aubrey, Marcus, and Paul on open relationships. And that opened up like sex at dawn and fucking mating in captivity and all this stuff. And I was just like, what is going on? Because I've always had this like non-fulfillment deep down of like, if I'm with a girl, I'm always like, I want more, I want more, I want more. And I'd love you to touch on like, now looking back at that whole era for you, like, how did you fulfill that in yourself? Like that feeling of like, because it's always easy to want more. There's all these shiny diamonds out there, and it's like, I think I know the answer is like, coming back into yourself and obviously with your plant medicine journeys and stuff, like in the meditation, you start to just go, I don't really need that. I kind of need this. You know what I mean? Is that kind of the same for you?
There's a couple big turning points there. And again, like towards the end of it, my wife and I, through the influence of friends, being around Paul, being around Aubrey, Dr. Dan Engel, I get to go hunting with Chris Ryan, after we had read Sex at Dawn.
Oh, sick.
It made sense to us. I talked with my wife about this, and it was like, it makes sense in a tribal setting. I don't know if it makes sense in the modern world. And Paul actually pulled me aside right when we had opened our marriage. And, he gave me a stern talking to like I was his son. And I remember smiling. I'm like, Paul, we're on the same team here. What are you doing? And he's like, you don't fucking get it. He's like, this can fucking ruin your whole life. And he was so serious because of the hell he had been through getting it to the position that he is now, where he has Penny and Angie and shit's perfect. Like didn't start that way. It was a fucking nightmare. And that's really what he was trying to warn me about. I didn't see it because, naivety and happy-go-lucky, like, yeah, we can do this. Love is love. We got infinite love. I'll love every kid the same. I can love more than one woman the same. Polyamory. And that startled a lot of fucking people online. Like, I had no idea the knee-jerk reaction from most men was like, oh, just revolted,
Really?
And in my mind, especially coming from plant medicines, like, if that's something I want for myself, I have to offer that in return. It's a two-way street. Or what are we doing here? Right. It just has to be that way. And so, I had a girlfriend for a couple of months, and she was a good friend of ours, which made sense because like the dating game there's nothing awesome about dating, and then from my angle, like if I'm a dude who has married with children and I'm out in New York City and I'm like, yeah, I'm married with kids, but my wife's into it. You're like, how many dirtbag assholes have said that to a girl in the bar? You're in an open relationship, right? So I was like, we're kind of fucked, like the idea
Mm.
I had of just getting strange and having fun, unique sexual experiences, that was out.
Mm.
So it had to be someone we knew, someone we cared about, someone with similar values, and we had her for a while. It was good until it wasn't. A lot of the stuff like I talk about with food, she still ate like shit. She was still
Mm.
drinking tap water, and I was like,
Uh,
I need you up here, not
yeah.
down here. Like
Yeah.
this does matter.
Yeah.
And ultimately at the end of it, because I was stretched so thin, like I remember reading More Than Two, An Ethical Guide to Polyamory, and they said the one finite resource you have is time, right? Because you just can't give time to everywhere. And I had Jamie Wheel on the podcast after the fact. Jamie's a really good friend, also a mentor. He's spoken at Burning Man. He's been all the conscious communities and Dominator in Italy to the places in Costa Rica where like 90% of the people living there are open,
Mm.
right? It's not a requirement to get in, but like you have to be okay with it to get in,
Mhm.
even if you're not. And basically, they said you need at least 50 people in your group that are participating this way. So it's like, don't have that. They say if you don't have 50, you can have a primary partner, that's your husband or wife. You can have kids. You can have a vocation, which isn't a job. It's like the thing that lights you up to wake up each morning and roll out of bed and do. And you can have extra partners. Choose any three of the four.
Mm.
Right. And when I sat with that, and this is after I'd broken up, and I was just like, I'd rather learn Native American flute than get a fucking girlfriend.
Mm.
Like that was the most taxing shit. And it didn't matter, and Jamie's point was like, think of how long you've been together with Tosh. Think of everything you guys have gone through. Think of all the leveling up you've gone through. Even onboarding someone new, they would always be 10 years behind where you are with your wife, and even on a physical level, like when you really make love to your person, especially on the tail end of a mushroom journey, like you start to figure out all of the ins and outs of your partner, and they do the same for you, right? So
Yeah.
like you're the master of their body and they're the master of your body. No one can compete with that,
Mm.
So it made a lot of sense at that point, but I also wanted my wife I wanted to be a two-way street. And so, she had a boyfriend for a couple of years, and in the end, she felt the same way.
Mm.
She didn't have a vocation, but being a mother is her vocation. Like she homeschools our kids. It is her thing, and then beyond that, like she felt like she was stretched too thin. Like there's too much demand. And one of the first things they say in More Than Two, An Ethical Guide to Polyamory, is that one of the biggest issues people run into if they're polyamorous is that they date someone who's monogamous to them.
Mm.
It's like,
Yeah.
I'm polyamorous with my wife, but the person I'm dating is monogamous. Now they need all of their needs met from the person who can't give them all their needs. They can't meet them fully
Mm.
from a time standpoint. And that really resonated because both who I dated and both who she dated were monogamous to us.
Yeah.
And so it's like, you can explain this shit all day long and tell them like, yeah, you need to get a girlfriend or you need to find someone else in addition. But like years go by and it doesn't happen. And, it was a really hard lesson. I'm sure a lot of people
Fuck
were
yeah.
I knew it, fuck it. I knew you're going to crash and burn. I don't think we crashed and burned. I've never loved my life, my wife or my life more than I do right now.
Mm.
It brought us closer together in so many ways. And it was as challenging as a plant medicine ceremony that didn't end. Like I drink ayahuasca, I know in 8 hours, I'm coming back to some sense of reality.
Mm.
Iboga might take 36, but at some point it's going to stop. When you're in open, it doesn't stop. It just is nonstop lessons, nonstop demand of you being the very best you can be. And because of those pressures, that's when I started getting into The Mastery of Love by Don Miguel Ruiz. My wife and I would read a chapter, I'd read a paragraph or a page, she'd read a page, we'd go through a whole chapter, and then we discuss like, is he correct? Where are we? How did this land with us? What do we need to do to become this? And we really started analyzing our relationship in a way that we hadn't before. Like we wanted to improve our marriage because of that. I read Nonviolent Communication because of that. I wanted to know, like, even if I'm getting yelled at, like, how do I find the core need that's here to make sure there's resolution to the conflict? Like that, and I never would have, like, no plant medicine journey would have forced me to have that kind of introspection into my marriage or that kind of fire lit under my ass to be better at communicating, to be a better husband. So again, many lessons, a lot of growth, and I have no judgment today for people that are in on that, but I know what it takes too. And very few people have it worked out the way Paul does, where everyone's happy. Like, and I know them, everyone's happy in that scenario. I know a lot of people that are, yeah, it's great, you know, and they're just
Yeah.
in it. I can see they're in it. I can see they're wrung out. I can see they're tired.
Yeah.
And you know, that's just part of it. Now, the second piece of this, sorry, I know I'm long-winded here, but
No, I
the
love
second
it.
piece of this is King Warrior Magician Lover.
Yeah.
So King Warrior Magician Lover, the first time I had that on my nightstand for like 2 years, and I talked to an intuitive, and she's like, you need to read this book. And I was like, oh, it's right. It's like in the #1 slot on my nightstand, but I haven't touched it for 2 years. I keep passing other books above it. And she's like, you're going to read it now, read it all the way through. And the second time you read it, actually take inventory. First time, just read it. Second time, go through and take inventory of your life. And I was like, okay. She goes, the reason is when people do shadow work, that's actually impossible. The shadow is anything that is inherently outside of your purview. You can't see what's in your fucking shadow, right? The ego won't allow it. So claiming you're doing shadow work is kind of an oxymoron. It's very hard to get to that. But what she said was, if you have a pattern in your past from when you're young, you did this in every relationship you've ever been in, that pattern might still be here right now on some level, right? And if that's the case now, because you know your former you isn't you, your ego doesn't care about that. That's your old you. But if you can see repetition of the pattern, then it likely is still something you can work on right now. And so I read the book in 3 days. I was blown the fuck away. I went back through it and took inventory, and I was like, holy shit, there's a lot in here that I for sure still have, right?
Yeah.
So what's funny is and even though I fought, you know, professionally for years, I really lacked the warrior, like the archetype of the warrior, not the gamesmanship or the wanting of the being down to scrap and fight. Like that was there, but the archetype of the warrior was way different than I had imagined. The archetype of the king, way different than I had imagined. And you know, they balance each other on a cross. So for people who haven't read the book, the king and the magician counterbalance each other, the lover and the warrior counterbalance each other. And you could say, when something's off, because there's a light side and a shadow side to each archetype, if I have a shadow side of the lover, I don't use the positive side of the lover to balance that. I use the positive side of the warrior to balance that. And so one of the things, you know, one of the shadows of the lover is the Don Juan archetype. The guy, the Casanova, who wants to fuck the divine feminine in every female, but it's never enough. The thirst is never quenched. Whenever you get there, it's just like, oh, something's off. I need a new one. Also the addict, right? And I for sure had the addict in me many times throughout my life, even though I managed it well and could take care of myself when I had to. I have no doubt, you know, like putting 8 pills in my ass one night, like, to get high. Like there's no doubt that addict was running rampant at certain points in my life. And, you know, so I had to balance that with the positive side of the warrior. And the positive side of the warrior is discipline while holding love, right? It's not just overly disciplined. And I'll give you an example of what discipline looks like without love. That might be like a guy like Goggins signing up for 50 marathons in a year, right? I'm not poo-pooing on him, but like, to me, it might seem that he could use plant medicines to actually discover what he's running from, not running for. You know, like he's already done it all. He's awesome. He's an inspiration to fucking millions of people. But he'd find balance, right? So the lover is our balance point. It gives us a why. Why do we have discipline? Why are we the warrior? Why do we live in a certain way with a code and an ethos? And it's because of the things we love, right? As Paul talks about, you know, that little warrior is the hero until the hero decides what's worth dying for and what's worth fighting for. Then he steps from the hero into the warrior. And so I think that having clarity on these things, which happened because of open, you know, having clarity on these things really helped me to understand. Because there is a thing, like right when we opened, it was like, fuck, I feel young again. I remember talking to Aubrey about that. I was like, I feel young, like the hunter is back. I didn't realize that part of me died, you know, but that part was back and that felt really good. It felt very useful. And then you know, part of the hunting game though is the dating game, which is just like, this is a waste of fucking time. I have a vocation, I have kids, I have my primary. What am I doing wasting my time? So it was a redirection of where I want to put my energy and a clarification of that. And I think as it clarified that, it really allowed me to witness and see who I married as the fucking gift God gave me, you know, and just a fucking amazing person who could absolutely satisfy every need I ever had. And then I was able to, you know, still bring about the hungry wolf with her, but allow that hunter to go to rest when I'm out in the world. You know, we all witness beauty no matter what. That was part of the things that that made it cool for us, when we were first talking about it, was we never had an issue with saying like, dude, that girl's hot. She'd be like, yeah, she got great ass, or like, hey, look at this lifeguard. And she'd be like, yeah, I think he likes me, like that was cool. It was never jarring for us to do that, because even if you say yes to committing yourself to one person, attraction is still alive, right? That's eros. That's what Gaffney's talking about. Like the thing that fucking lights you up and ignites you inside, that's a part of the divine makeup. And you don't want that to be something that you consider shameful or negative. You want to say yes to that, but also know what to do with that. And so finally, I'm at a point in my life, it's actually happened in a Fit for Service event, where I saw, one of our ultra hot members, and I felt the aliveness come alive of the hunter. with no thinking of like, no fantasy, no like, well, what would talk, like no fantasy, no beyond that, just the witnessing of her beauty lit me on fire. I felt more alive and had more energy and more libido. And that was it. There was no story attached to it. And it took going through all that shit to get to a place where I could do that, where I could witness someone and see their beauty and fully take on the allurement of that without having a story attached to it, without having a need to fulfill anything beyond that. And that took fucking 4 or 5 years to get to, but ultimately was an incredibly important path for us.
That's cool, man. I think of 2 stories right now, right? And it's one from Jake's dad and one from a couple that know Paul. And I won't say their name. Let's call the female's name Mary, and let's call the male's name Jack, right? Paul was with Mary and Jack, and they were talking about going open. And then in front of Jack, Paul goes to Mary, would you like to have sex with me tonight? And then she goes, oh, I don't think Jack will like that. And he goes, yeah, I don't think he will either. And then that was and that was his roundabout teaching to Jack, really, say, oh, do you want this, and because they were like, whoa, that's so strange. And then the second story is Jake's dad, because Jake's dad, who passed away about a year ago now, but he used to be a swinger, right? And used to go on like cruise ship swings and those sort of things. And he goes, you think you're spiritual? Wait till you watch your wife walk into a room with another man and say you're not allowed to come in. he goes, that's, and then it set him off, right? You're like,
Dude.
Yeah. And he goes, I thought I was there. I thought I was good with it. And then that happens and I'm fucking back to a little child again. That had my toy taken away from me. And
dude, I still remember my dad, because my dad was a pretty spiritual man. And he said to me one day, he's like, what would you feel if your girlfriend, and I was only like 22 at the time, 23. Well, how would you feel if some guy come in and like wanted to have sex with her? And I just remember going blood red mad and just like fully wasn't ready to hear that. And then maybe about a year later, I was thinking like, why did that trigger me so much? And that led me to like all the podcasts that I listened with you guys and stuff like that. And I ended up going down a similar road to you. Obviously not similar because you're a little bit further down the path, but man, I couldn't agree more that it's the most challenging thing. And if you want to do pretty much a life's work of spiritual work, opening up a relationship does that for you. Hey?
Yeah.
I couldn't, it's the hardest thing ever.
Yeah. Was the first time you slept with someone else, was there a subconscious or even conscious level of like, oh, that wasn't it? Or I felt guilty? Or did you feel alive? Like, fuck yeah, I love that I'm doing this now.
It was, I went first, and I mean, the pleasure of it was fucking unreal. And to be perfectly candid, like I didn't last 30 fucking seconds. Like, it was like I was 15 years old again, brand new, not a married man who's got plenty of experience. So I was just like, oh God, it's working. And that was it. And it took time, but we ended up doing an STD test months into it to make sure, like, hey, can we go without a condom? And we had sex once without a condom, and I ended up, she was, on the pill or whatever. And I ended up finishing inside of her. Sorry, this is a TMI for some of the listeners, but I remember when I did that, I had the distinct, and we'd already been together for 2 months. Like, everything's on the up and up. And some part of me knew, no, like absolutely not. That's not how it happens. Like, you don't finish in anyone but your wife. And that was just like a whole, whoa, dude, it came out of left field. Like, it wasn't like the voice of God. It was the voice of my higher knowing being like, fuck no, that's the line. Don't cross it. And it really hit me like a ton of bricks, to the point where I, as I investigated, like, that was it. That was the last time we had sex. You know, like it was that big of a fucking deal where I was like, well, if that's a no, then let me rethink this.
Yeah.
You know, and you know, a lot of people talk compersion. I was pretty candid about experiences with my wife and I, and it's funny. It's like I went on Jade Bryce's podcast. She's a homie. Years
Sick.
ago, she's been one of our best friends, and I was really candid there. I talked about an experience I had on my wife's birthday where the first time me and her partner actually had a three-way with her, you know, and I'll leave out the details of it, but the fear, you know, you talk about, they use this word compersion a lot in the open communities. Compersion is, you know, if compassion is I feel your pain, compersion is I feel your pleasure, right? And how like it's a big buzzword in those communities. I don't know many people that do what I did. I don't know many people that say like, let's actually try this on, you know, and I've done plenty of medicine journeys, MDMA. I've done a lot with this dude to actually open my heart and be cool with him. He's fucking awesome. He's still one of our best friends to this day. But it still was a massive hill to climb. And we were both fucking super nervous, you know, when it went down. But once we were in the throes of it, I was like, man, every fear I had of this guy being younger than me, more handsome, fucking bigger dick, any of that stuff, it just all went out the window. It was like I saw the humanness in him and I saw her pleasure. And that was compersion, because when I could witness it in her and also not be afraid of it, then I was like, oh, and I'm contributing to this too. Like that was fucking rad.
Yeah.
But knowing the challenge that takes, like you can't just, it's like saying like, hey dude, try 30 grams of mushrooms.
Yeah.
Like most people on this planet can't fucking handle that. They're not prepared for that. They wouldn't have a positive experience from that. And even just mentioning it right now, like you know, if you clip that and put it on Instagram, you'd get a lot of fucking people talking shit on there. You know, like I still get cucked to this day. People call me a cuck to this day, and I'm like, no, that's not it. You know,
Nah.
but they don't want the nuance. So yeah, I mean, the compersion piece is a big one, but I mean, still, like I mentioned, it's such. I'm happy I was able to come to the place where I felt that, and we still are like. You know, we're monogamous to each other, but like ish, right? Like if we're at Burning Man and some cool experience comes up, it's like, fuck yeah, let's, I know what that experience can be, minus all the other shit attached to it.
Yeah.
Right. So we're parents first. We have our vocations. We're, you know, today was day one of a homeschool co-op, and we're going to be doing a school like Tim Kennedy, an apogee school here at the farm in a year or two. And so like, we really give like, that's what we're into. Like I'm into the farm. I'm into health and wellness. I'm into the podcast. I'm into helping people, and I want to help kids. You know, like that shit matters to me a lot more than swinging or having a good time.
Yeah.
You know, and so it's just a difference in life experience now at 42 than when I think I was 37 or 38 when we were really talking about that.
Fuck, you're so young still,
for the first time. I know, but like a lot changes. You know, you got a 9-year-old and a 5-year-old. Like a lot changes because of that. So I think yeah, I mean, that basically sums it up. But yeah, if you guys got more questions, I got more for you.
Yeah. What comes to mind is when Ram Dass, he talks about relationships, and he's like, if they're willing to work and you're willing to do the work, it'll really fulfill that space for a really long time. And I feel like that's what you've just explained. Magic.
Yeah. And Burning Man, I've always been curious about it. Is it as good as it looks from all the way over in Australia here? Is it amazing?
It is and it isn't. And I'll tell you why.
Yeah.
You know, like the first time we went was 2017. We were there for 3 days. I had to leave for a wedding with like one of my best friends. I wouldn't have left for anyone else, but I was in the wedding. So we leave after 3 days, straight shot from Burning Man to Malibu for this dude's wedding. It was hard. It was very hard. It was challenging to go from Burning Man to, you know, I've got a feeling, but you know, like the wedding playlist. I was like, no, dude, we went backwards in time. This is not a good look. And then the next year we stayed for 5 days, and I was like telling my wife, I was like, we really gotta be smart about this. We gotta pace ourselves. And she knows pacing, you know, she's a runner. I don't know pacing. So I was like, well, Tuesday, we'll be here Monday through Friday. Let's take Tuesday, Thursday off. Tuesday comes around. It's fucking awesome. We meet up with a bunch of buddies. We get on Diplo's art car. It's wild, right? Like how shit unfolds. And so like, we're fucking going ham on Tuesday. I was like, all right, it's Wednesday. We got to take Wednesday off. And I'm laying in the tent, like in this big tent at Playa Alchemist. And this lady from Switzerland comes up, who's beautiful, and she's older. And she's like, oh, hello, can I give you a smoothie? And I was like, yeah, I'll take a smoothie. That sounds great. She's like, would you like a special smoothie? And I was like, a special smoothie? I was like, yeah, I'll do a special one. And she comes back and it tastes fantastic. I'm just sucking it down. I'm like, what makes it special? She goes, it says Molly in it. And I was like, all right, dude, there's no days off, you know,
Yeah.
there's no days off. And we got home from that, you know, like a big reason I chose not to drink anymore was because I didn't like being hungover around my son. I was like, I never want to be hungover in front of him. I never want to say, Bear, I can't play with you. Daddy's got a headache. Bear, I can't wrestle you because I was an asshole last night and fucking drank too much. I never wanted to do that. And you know, even though that trip we had it paid in full, we were still paying for fun on credit. Because when we got home, we had a debt to pay back. And that debt lasted 2 fucking weeks till our neurochemistry was the same, right? I remember I just holding my wife while she was crying because the neurochemistry was thrown off. For weeks.
Yeah.
It was thrown off, right? We're taking Sammy and everything, nootropics, everything I know on health and wellness to try to revamp the neurochemistry. And ultimately, you know, with how hard we went, it was like, we can't do that again. We can come back, but we can't do that ever again. You know, not with Bear. Even though he was staying with family and having fun when we were gone, we weren't the same for at least 2 weeks after that, you know? So that was a big, big lesson. We also knew when we really wanted to get pregnant with Wolf, like we can't go to Burning Man. Her body, the female body, you know, needs carbohydrates, it needs fat, it needs protein, it needs everything. It can't go carnivore and still have a monthly cycle. It can't do a lot of things if there's something missing. And so that nesting actually takes place seasonally. It's over the course of a whole year. If you throw your shit off for 2 weeks, it could take 6 months to respond from that, right? So 2019, we stayed home. 2020, we had Wolf. And then from there, it was like very, very clear. I didn't want to travel for anything but work for the first 3 years of her life. It took me, like literally when she was 3, it was my first ayahuasca journey back in Soltara, first hunting trip away from home. And I started to do more stuff that was expansive for me again because she was 3, but it'll be a long time before we head back. I will say, it is worth doing at least once because daytime is cool. You know, you're like, oh shit, you're like, this is Mad Max. It's different. And they built this whole thing in a matter of weeks, you know?
Wow.
And there are some really cool ethoses there, like the ethos of radical inclusion. Sometimes that gets missed. I think it's one of the most important tenets. And, you know, like the year before I got there, they got mad at like the high tech posh places and dumped everyone's water out on their speakers to fuck it up. So it's like, you guys are ruining Burning Man, like that kind of feeling. It's like, that's not radical inclusion, you know?
Yeah.
But even through all that, like when you go there and it turns to night and all the lights up, like you're in a fucking whole different world.
That's cool.
And it's akin to talking to somebody about a psychedelic experience without them having had done psychedelics. Like you see that light up and you're on some shit and you're riding your bike around the middle of the playa thinking you're headed to nowhere, and then fucking 15 minutes later, this art car shows up and you're just like, how'd you know how to get here? Like somebody just followed the fucking right way and you found these guys at 5 a.m. and it's, you know, Skrillex or somebody like one of the best artists in the world is playing right now.
Wow.
And it is a wild experience. It's wild. It's worth doing.
Yeah. Okay. I might have to experience that at some stage in my life.
Got to do that.
Yeah. That's fucking cool, man. Man, I want to touch on too, just from your experience with, and you would witness it in other fighters, no doubt, because I'm sure you've probably been through it in some sense. And like, how do you go from a professional sport, like something so intense as the UFC, right, and then not doing that anymore, and then having your identity attached to that? Like Jake sort of went through it with his bodyboarding career, like one of the best bodyboarders in the world, and then was like, is this me? Like, am I the best bodyboarder in the world? And what happens when I'm not that? Did you ever go through that sort of experience as a professional athlete?
I did, but it happened earlier. It happened in college. So I started football American football at age 8 or 9, walked on at Arizona State, made the team, made travel squad, was a hard hat winner where they gave it to like 3 Ironman winner. It's like 3 guys did that on the team. 3 guys were given that award. It's basically the hardest worker on the team award. And I set the bench my whole senior year. So I had to sit with not being able to go pro the whole year, and it fucking ate at me. And I had, the best in Western medicine, Valium, Xanax, Vicodin, whatever the fuck I wanted. And it was great at getting rid of anxiety, but it wasn't great at getting rid of the root problem. This is before I got introduced to Chek's work and before I really knew how to take care of myself. And, I hated school. I didn't want to be there. I just wanted to be there to play football. And when that ended, that fucked me up. Like I had a real, real hard time. had a really tough, entry point with the relationship I was in, where it was just like I just felt like I could never be loved, and at a certain point I was like, fuck it, and I took every pill that I had, left. So like these 60 pill containers, thankfully, were down pretty far from partying, but I remember throwing them all into a cup, down in the whole thing.
Whoa.
I drove the top of parking lot 7, stripped down naked to fucking jump.
Whoa.
And again, before any real spiritual connection, but I'm standing up there naked, and I could just feel, 3:30 in the morning, I could just feel this warmth wash through me. And I was 5 minutes from that parking lot, so I don't think it was the drugs kicking in. And just the answer, not yet. So like this peace that I was seeking for many of my life, I could feel the words "not yet" and understand them in all directions. They were speaking to me to answer the question I hadn't even asked. I want peace right now. I want this pain to end, and it will, but not yet. You're not going to go yet. And so I was just like, wow, man. Like it felt like a direct transmission with source. And then right as I come out of that, I hear this guy go, "Hey, up there!" And he, "Oh shit, you're naked!" Like I realized it's the fucking campus guard, and I was like, "Oh fuck!" Like, yeah, let me throw on. I got a robe. I'll throw this on and come down. I was like, "It's all good now." So I throw on the robe. I come down, and I told him everything I'd taken. So he drove me to the hospital immediately. I woke up 36 hours later. My family had flown in. That was ground zero.
Fuck.
That was the rebirth, where all of the I ought to and I shoulds just popped. That whole fucking bubble popped. It was the first time in my life where I really truly considered not finishing college. I'm a senior at Arizona State. I've got a 2-year degree. I've passed all my shit as a junior. I actually have more credits. I basically have like a semester left, and still I have no desire to finish that. So at that point, it was the first time I really considered that. I didn't know what I wanted to do or what I wanted to be, but I knew what I was missing, and I was missing the camaraderie of having a team. I was missing, my brotherhood. I was missing the squad, the tribe. And so that's what directed me into starting MMA, not to fight, just for the team. I wanted to be on a team again. And I wanted to do something athletically that pushed me, but didn't feel like a workout. When I was at ASU, we'd have 100 guys in the gym, fucking big squat Wednesday. It's max effort. I got Joe House behind me, 2 beasts on each side. Everyone's fucking watching you max out. With death metal playing as loud as possible, or gangster rap playing as loud as possible, and there's cheering for you. And like you come up or you don't come up, but the whole team's there. Then I go to 24-hour fitness. I'm by myself. I've got headphones in. I'm doing 225 on bench press. Like this feels like fucking masturbation compared to where I was at. Right? Like it's not the same. So fighting ended up being something that I just wanted to try. And then, I had a guy trained for 6 months, went to a new gym. He also had like a small promotion. He's like, "Dude, you're handsome, you're tall, you're athletic, fight for me pro. If it goes bad, you could say you fought once pro. If it goes good, you can stay in it and see what you want to do." And I was like, it's not bad bait. So my first 2 fights, I won it under 30 seconds. And then after that, I was hooked, and I really had to think like, what do I want to do with this? How far do I want to go? How serious do I want to take it? And that started to shift very quickly, because I realized there was an opportunity there for something. Like I had a talent. Let me see how far I can take this. But when fighting ended, because I had plant medicines, because I had learned through Paul Chek at the beginning of fighting how to take care of myself, and I had equanimity, I had a general sense of like, my life is good. I'm good. I'm okay. Like I didn't need to, if I wanted to party, it's because I wanted to party. It wasn't because I was uncomfortable in my own skin. And that was a big shift for me. And when fighting ended, I knew I had a rule for myself. I said, and I made this rule when I was first in it, in Rage of the Cage, said, if I ever drop below 500 at any of the organizations, I'm going to retire right then. So if it happens in Rage of the Cage, if I'm 2-3, I'm out. If it happens in King of the Cage, I'm out. If it happens in the UFC, I'm out. And that was before ever making it to the UFC. And so made it to the UFC, kind of lost my way in from the Ultimate Fighter, but they saw I had potential. Lost my first fight, won 4 in a row with 2 fight of the nights and a 26-second knockout of Ricardo Romero. And then I lost 4 in a row, putting me at 4-5 in the UFC. And that final fight, I knew if I lose, I'm out. And so again, I was 32, no idea what I wanted to do. I just knew this isn't it anymore. And the plant medicines really were the thing that allowed me to unattach myself from being a fighter. Like I didn't have an identity as a fighter. I also knew, my dad always used to tell me, football is a finite thing. You can't do it your whole life. You're going to do something else. It's the best thing you have going. And I know you love it, but the majority of your life will not be in football, it'll be in something after football. And I was like, all right.
Cool.
You know, and so I had that still in me from football for fighting. I didn't know what I was going to do, but I knew this is a short chapter of my life, and the rest of my life is going to contain more. I also had, you know, we were paid like dog shit, like absolute dog shit, treated like dog shit. They basically own you. And I started to witness some of my teammates and friends in the game that were only a few years older than me starting to slip up. You know, like they started to appear punchy. They started to forget what the fuck. Like I had a guy not only forget what he was talking about, like that happens to me, it happens to all of us as we age, but he wouldn't just forget what he was talking about, where he could be like, oh, you were saying such and such, pick up from such and such. He'd forget we were in a conversation.
Wow.
So we'd be standing eye to eye, and I'd say, you were saying such and such. And he'd go, huh? Like he had no fucking clue.
Whoa, that's scary.
Right. And I was like, this dude's 35.
Whoa.
And I'm 32. Right. Like that was real writing on the wall. Cause you know, we had no idea we knew what we were doing was taking damage. We didn't know how much damage. We knew boxing was worse because you've only got your head and your body to hit.
Yeah.
We've got legs, we've got submissions, we've got wrestling, we've got a lot of other things as targets. We know it's not as bad as boxing, but how bad is it? But at that time in the sport, we fought 3 days a week. We fought Monday, Wednesday, and Friday.
Wow.
And the guys I was fighting were heavyweight champ Cain Velasquez, light heavyweight champ Daniel Cormier, middleweight champ Luke Rockhold. And sometimes Lyoto Machida would come in and fucking spar with us, or Andrei Arlovsky. Like there's the best in the world were who I fought with 3 days a week before going in to fight 3 times a year in front of an audience. Right. So that took its toll. And that weighed really heavily on me in the decision process, along with the fact that I was still living in my mom's garage making fucking peanuts, you know? So I made it a little easier, but to your point, you know, like I've always befriended high level veterans, you know, like I think of guys like Andy Stump, who was a Navy SEAL, and then, you know, squirrel suit jumper. He'll jump out at fucking 30,000 feet with an oxygen tank on his face to skydive. And you're just like, that sounds fucking dope. And I know why you do that. Like, I know why you're doing that, right? Even though he's got kids, like I know the itch that you're scratching with that. And it took me a while to really settle into that. When I finished, I was like, cool, now I can run. I want to see it. My wife got me into distance running. I was like, let me see about powerlifting. I want to powerlift, see how strong I can get. I was training with Jesse Burdick and Mark Bell and a lot of the homies out in NorCal, and we're picking up heavy weight. You know, like I never got to be powerlifter level strong, but I got pretty strong. I had a 575 deadlift.
Whoa. Wow.
And that was strong for me, you know? And then at that time, when I had a 550 plus deadlift, I ran a 55K ultra at 238 pounds.
Whoa.
So I remember all the runners being like, do you see the bodybuilder running? Like, I'm not a fucking bodybuilder. I'm a fighter. I don't look like a bodybuilder. Bodybuilders are fucking yoked, you know, but to them, compared to the runners, I looked like a freak. I looked like Lou Ferrigno, you know, but I finished that 55K ultra, and that's the only ultra I'll ever do. You know, it's like I had this, I was still searching for the thing that would give me fulfillment, that would give me like a feather in the cap to say, this is who I am now. This is what I do now. This is how hard I can push myself. And, you know, thanks to medicines, thanks to meditation, thanks to all these things, I could see that for what it was after the fact and be cool with not doing it anymore. I could deadlift for the joy of deadlifting, but not trying to get to 600 pounds, because 600 pounds is only a step towards 625 to 650 to 700, right? It's a never ending fucking game of chasing my tail. Why don't I just deadlift for the joy of deadlifting and not worry about how much weight I'm putting up? You know, maybe I focus a bit more on my mobility and make sure that I'm not sore. So if my kid comes at me like a bull in a china shop and jumps on my neck, then I'm not like, ow, hey, stop. I worked out hard yesterday. You can't jump on daddy's neck. Fuck that. That's not who I want to be, right? Yeah, jump on me. Let's play. Let's go. I want to be ready for that. And so that was a big shift. And even coming out here to Austin, you know, I was like, fuck, let's see what happens in jiu-jitsu. I stayed in jiu-jitsu in the gi primarily from when I retired, got my black belt in 2016, 2 years later. And I loved it. I still love the sport. I coach now. I coach the kids.
Oh, cool.
I did a lot of no-gi at 10th Planet because it was on it. So like 20 feet from my desk, I could walk to the fucking jiu-jitsu mat. So I'm like, this is a no-brainer, right? But like 2 heel hooks in 8 months of sitting on the bench, not being able to jog, run, or squat, I was like, I can't fuck with no-gi. I can't. It's just not worth it, right? I'm not getting paid to do this. It's just not valuable for me anymore. And so there's been many re-educations that have helped guide me to the path that I'm in now. Even like I was talking about in the beginning, like this is the first time in my life where I've done a 3-month block of body weight only. I don't
Wow.
care if I'm just watching my weight. I don't care if I lose weight. I don't care if I gain weight. Like, let's see what happens. See what happens to my balance. See what happens to my body. How do I feel when I run? How do I feel when I train kickboxing? And that feels cool. You know, I've always appreciated like the N=1 experiment.
Yeah.
Let's run the experiment and see how I respond, rather than like the need of it in that and of itself. If I'm just running the experiment, it allows me to be more of the observer than attached to an outcome. Right. Whereas like other things like fighting, you have to be attached to the outcome.
Yeah.
Like, you have to be in that space. You know, if you're not attached to the outcome, what the fuck are you doing?
Yeah.
Right. So it's been really refreshing to be able to train in a different way and to still get good gains and to still be able to push myself in something new, you know?
Yeah. I was going to ask that. How do you feel with the body weight only? How does that feel in your body? Has pain subsidized? Do you feel more posturally fit, like long time at attention fit? How are you feeling with that?
Yeah, I mean, I can still I can do really slow negative push-ups for the first time in a while. I can do a lot of push-ups. My core is stronger than it's been probably since college football. That's probably the strongest my core's ever been. So even through MMA, I think my core is stronger than that. My mobility's better. My balance has never been better ever, because I've never focused on that. So like little things like a lunge, you know, step back lunge to knee up hold, right? And then back to knee up hold, just doing shit like that for 6 reps each side, and then side lunges, hopping out of the side lunge with a knee up hold, and different things like that are forcing me to stabilize. You know, the old what was that thing, like the ski board that you'd slide back and forth on?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Those things, like using something, doing a similar exercise without that, like hopping to one side and catching and loading, and then hopping to the other side and catching and loading on one foot. Those have been really, and they're very basic fucking exercises.
Yeah.
You know, it's not like reinventing the wheel, but focusing on those exclusively does give me way better posture. My body feels better. My neck is far less sore. I feel lighter on my feet, you know, and I've fluctuated weight. You know, I had a parasite. I dropped to 207. I lost the whole weight. I dropped a whole weight class.
Whoa.
Wow.
And ended up taking ivermectin. I've been eating carbs. I've been gaining my weight back and back to 220, which is generally pretty much around where I'm at. If I powerlift, I can go up to 230, 235, but I like being 220. It's kind of a happy medium. You know, when I fought, my best weight was around 218. So I'm more mobile. It doesn't hurt to run. You know, we play pickleball here at the farm and shit like that. And like that, it feels good to be an athlete still, you know, and even just kickboxing with the boys. I'll hold mitts for my farm guys. I'll get a good workout in. I've been throwing on, God, what are they called? Blood flow restriction. So not katsu, but similar to that, you know, pump up the cuffs, go hard for 20 minutes, take them off. And I'm getting fantastic results from it with doing less, you know? So like, it's been interesting to see that. It was pretty unexpected. And I do love weight training so much, you know, like I love kettlebells. I love deadlifting. I love different things like that. So I'm sure I'll come back to some of that.
Yeah.
But I'll probably come back with a lot less weight than I think I need. You know, I think I'll probably start really light.
Yeah.
And just really let my whole body engage with it, you know, so I can continue to map that.
Yeah, that's cool,
that's
man.
Everything, eh?
Because I think, you know, you don't lose it overnight. When you see an older person get stiff, like in their 70s, and they just, like, if they trained, like I remember I heard Ben Greenfield say years ago, like just laying on the ground and standing back up fast, and people lose that when they age. But if you do that every day, you're not really going to lose that quick. You won't lose that overnight. So these like lateral jump, lunge, pushing out things, you don't see people do that very often. Even young people, once they get out of school and shit, they'll just go to the gym and do their squats and their deadlifts. But then they'll start moving like a squat and a deadlift. Like,
yeah, fully. Yeah,
like,
you got to mix it up.
Yeah, they'll be stiff. And I remember Paul said it, train slow, be slow. So I'm moving more towards that now. I really love the cable machine. I love the cable machine, just weight moving through the body instead of on top of the body. I think it's a really good way to hydrate your tissue in different planes of motion, man. Because I found I got really heavy into the tissue work, like trying to hydrate my fascia with a roller and scan my entire body, right? And I noticed when I actually went through my whole body, I was doing 3 hours a day on myself. This was years ago now. But I found most of those spots have not come back. So I did my inner groin 3 years ago and I've never had to do it since. But most people I give that to, it's agony for them to do that, right? But I think because I'm always on the cable machine and like wringing out my towel, wringing out my cobweb in different planes of motion, it's they haven't come back, which is really cool to see. So It's I think that's a big thing.
Yeah.
Like people are just riddled with trigger points they don't realize.
Yeah.
So that's what I sort of want to get out there. But for sure, man.
Yeah. Dude, I'm coming out to Austin actually on Monday. So I'm going to be in Austin. I was going to see if you'd be keen for a little workout or a little film or something.
100%, bro. 100%.
Yeah, I've got my
I'll
cinema
email you the
camera.
address and everything. We're 30 minutes south of the airport, so we're not far at all. That'd be awesome.
Sick. Yeah, I could film a little blog for you or something. It'd be epic, man.
Yeah, that'd be
Yeah.
cool. That'd be sick. Yeah, I'm getting my visa sorted. As I told you, I got locked up years ago, so I'm not allowed in the States. But I went to the embassy a couple months ago, and they're letting me in. I think it's just like a 6-month process. So I can't wait to go and just see it, man. It's like the movies to us, you know. It's like I want to see the diner. I want to see. I'm definitely going to try an In-N-Out burger. You know, like, I know I feel like shit.
Yeah, fuck yeah.
But I'm gonna have to try it. Like I just want to see that. And then now it's funny, like when growing up, Texas to us in Australia, you think of like redneck, you know what I mean? But now it's changed. Now it's changed to like, I think of like steakhouses, and I think you think of Joe Rogan, really.
Yeah, and these boys.
Yeah,
these
it
boys.
has changed. It has changed so much though too. I mean, even in 2020, I got here in 2017, and it's like there was a fucking caravan coming from New York and from LA at the same
Right.
time. A mass exodus of people leaving, you know, and it's like, don't forget why you're leaving. Please don't forget why you're leaving.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've always wanted to go to Australia. It's actually something it's one of Aubrey's favorite countries, and so we've
Sick.
really been talking about that. We're like, if we ever do like a Fit for Service again this year it ends.
Yeah.
If we
man.
do something like that overseas, it would probably be there, and
Awesome.
or maybe somewhere in Europe near the UK, because he could see like his number 3, I think, is Sydney out of his top 5 cities that listen to the Aubrey Market
Whoa.
podcast.
Wow.
Like it was somewhere in my top 10. So years ago when I looked at it, I was like, that's pretty fucking cool.
That is
It's
cool, man.
because like I've been to a lot of different places. I got to fight in Nottingham, which was awesome. Spent a few days in London. That was the Jimmy Manoa fight.
Yep.
And it was just interesting, like being in a totally different country, totally different vibe, same language, roughly, right?
Yeah,
like
yeah.
we understand each other.
Yeah,
You understand?
sure.
So I always thought about that. And I remember being in Thailand. You know, I spent 2.5 weeks out there and training at Tiger Muay Thai. And I remember going on Bangalore Road with my dad, and I was like, the only guys more shit-faced than us are the Aussies. It's like guaranteed. It was guaranteed, you know, the fucking chants and everything. And I was like,
Yeah.
this is a fun group. I want to fucking hang with these guys.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Man, well, we have a pretty big gym here in the water and that, so you guys are always welcome. Obviously, it's
Yeah.
pretty perfect for like workshops and whatnot. Big projector and it's on the water. It's nice, good vibe. And Sunshine Coast is pretty health conscious. Like right after this, I'm going to the farmers market. Yeah, I find, man, just about anywhere I've been in the world and other places, it's so easy to be healthy here. It's so easy to go get organic food, organic meat that's 20 minutes that way, but the surf is 5 minutes that way. It's like the farms are 10 minutes away, but it's a whole coast is here, and it's still a pretty big town, really. It's not the Gold Coast yet, but it's only a couple of hours away from the Gold Coast, and it's definitely going to turn into that one day. But that's what we're trying to do here. We're trying to make it all more health conscious and get people to spend the dollar at the right places, and it seems to be really working, man. It seems to be really popping off.
Yeah, there's a lot of regen farms here. Like just there's 20-minute inland. It's just like the best volcanic soil, and there's heaps of regen farms. We're up on one last weekend. Just so cool, man.
Yeah, it's cool.
Yeah.
But yeah, man,
You
would
guys,
love.
you guys gotta do your own harvest. So I had
Yeah.
Daniel Firth Griffiths on the podcast, and there was a study that they did. Fred Provenza, who was on Paul's podcast, he's like 86 or 87, one of the OGs from Utah State on regenerative agriculture. And so I'll make this brief because I know we're running out of time here, but you know, regenerative agriculture is obviously far better for you and better for the animal than, you know, factory farm shit, right?
Yeah.
Higher in omega-3s, higher in micronutrients, vitamins and minerals, that kind of stuff. But what they found was the way the animal dies is just as important as how it's raised.
Mhm.
And so the way they saw this was, you know, if we want to sell anything, USDA's got to put its fucking sticker on it. I don't know how they do it in Australia, but one of the workarounds is I can buy a cow on my buddy's land, pay him a stocking fee, and go, as long as I kill that cow, I can harvest it right there. I don't have to take it to the USDA.
Oh, amazing.
But how all the best stuff here gets processed is through the USDA. That's what allows it to be sold in stores. And so the best regenerative product, what they do is they ship that animal, and any animals we brought in, like they're fucked up for 3 weeks.
Yeah.
When they get here, it takes them a long ass time to settle down because they've never been on a fucking truck ride, right? So before death, that's what they're doing. They're going on their first car ride. They get to some place, they put them in a dark room for 3 days where they're standing their own feces, their own urine. They are not with their family. They're with a bunch of other animals they don't know. They get clamped around the ribs so they can't move. And then the No Country for Old Men, the thunk goes right in the back of the skull while they can't move, right?
Oh.
So in all those animals, their pH through the stress goes through the roof. And because that pH is so high, it makes you could have the most nutrients on the planet. It doesn't matter. They're less bioavailable. They're about 50% less bioavailable than if you were to hunt that animal.
Wow.
So Provenza runs this study, and what he's found was time to death didn't matter. So if you've got a fish and it takes you an hour to get out of the water, that didn't change the pH. If you shoot an animal in the gut and it lives for a day and you finish it the next day, that didn't change it. What changed it is if it was killed out of a natural setting.
Wow.
And that's fucking crazy to think that way.
Yeah,
because
that
means
is, man.
the best meat we're buying is still only giving us half of what it could.
Mm.
And the very best is the most local you can go. You know, if you've got a regenerative farm, if you're not regenerative farming, but you have one down the street from you, that's the food you need to eat. Because it's the grass, it's the environment, it's the sunlight, the longitude and latitude of where you live. It's your environment you're taking in. It's the best possible you can have. But that other piece is the reconnecting to how we harvest, the reconnecting to the animal through the death process and the dying process, and really honoring in that way. So I think I want to see that as more of the future, you know, in health and wellness, in the conscious communities, is saying like, all right, let's remember that this is a part of the sacred, that life goes with death, death goes with life, and that we have to participate in the death if we want to really honor the animal.
Yeah, it's such a massive thing, hey, because a lot of people in life really want to look at all the good, but they don't want to look at the bad, so they kind of like turn an eye to that. But it's like the most powerful thing ever. And even, you know, obviously you would have done it with plant medicine, looking into your own death or feeling your own death, and you really can connect with what that feels like. And the animal's no different.
Yeah,
it's powerful.
True.
Man.
Yeah.
It's powerful. It's like seeing the cows run into that new field the other day.
Yeah,
I was like, man, we fucking eat them. Like, I'm so grateful, but this is heavy.
Yeah, and how they had so much personality.
Yeah, they were like dogs, man. They ran in like dogs, and I was like, fuck, bro, this is like, life is intense.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was hunting in blinds, which I'll never do again. But in Texas, they've got like old fat man hunting, where you basically you hike up a tree, you hang out with a bow or rifle, and then at 50 yards, you know, a feeder goes off and all the whitetail come in, and you're supposed to, that's hunting, right?
Yeah.
They call that hunting. So I'm sitting up there, and then sure enough, some cows come through, and they didn't know I was there, but because they didn't see me, they were being playful. They were buttoned heads. They were rubbing their back like a big grizzly bear on the tree. I was like, fuck, man. Like these guys are awesome creatures. But yeah, it does, you know, the pain of death will deepen your respect and reverence for the thing you put in your body when you participate with it.
Yeah.
You know, and just knowing from a micronutrient standpoint and the bioavailability of it, it is the way. It's the oldest way, but we have to return to the old way.
Yeah, that's beautiful, man.
That's perfect. That's the best way to end this podcast, I think, man. That was perfect.
Yeah, man, I really appreciate your time, bro.
Yeah.
For us, it's huge. I remember first saw you in the UFC, actually. I'm an old school UFC fan still. And then you and Paul's podcast years ago, I was like, fuck, what, this guy's into this? That's, you know, I had no idea. Obviously the fighter archetype, you wouldn't assume it, you know?
Yeah. I remember Paul mentioned you when I was over there, and it's just like, man, you got to meet this guy. Like, he's just frothing on you.
Yeah. So yeah, really appreciate your time, bro. And again, love to meet you one day. And if you guys ever do anything out here, would love to help promote it and get the ball rolling. We know a lot of people in Sydney and whatnot, and I can definitely help you with that for sure.
That'd be awesome. Much appreciated, you guys. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah. Thanks
for your time, man.
Thanks, Joe.